computer. That's fine. I got plenty of space on this computer. Oh, and the minute class starts, there we go. The minute class starts. The second I pressed record. All right, so we've got a bunch of guests with us tonight. So we'll just start at the top and you guys can introduce yourselves as we'll go around, everybody. So Alexis, you can start. Introduce yourself and tell them where you're from.
Hi, my name is Alexis Berkey and I'm from Cypress, Texas. I'm currently advising at Bridgeland High School. I recently was working with Samantha Berry, but now I'm doing most of it by myself. So it's been a fun year, but definitely a new one. So I'm very excited to get to just like ask questions and get advice from y'all.
And I threatened them, they have to come with questions. So Andrea.
I'm Andrea Negri. This is my 14th year teaching, and right now I'm lazy and just advise yearbook at Bel Air High School, which is in Houston-ish. And I've taught basically whatever they tell me to on top of that. So.
And Deanne, speaking of lazy.
I am a retired news magazine advisor and photojournalism teacher from Westlake. Well, I now live in Stonewall, Texas, between Fredericksburg and Johnson City. If y'all are Texans, you may have been to our area, but I taught in Austin for all of my career at Westlake. And so, and it starts. I actually, before I even got my job, met Bradley because he is a Westlake graduate. He was not my student. We missed each other by a couple of years, but we've had a long friendship, and I'm always excited when he invites me to do this kind of stuff because it's as fun for us as it is for you all, I think. I'm done, Bradley.
All right. How about Shannon?
Hi, guys. I just finished my 13th year teaching commercial photography and retired from teaching in the classroom, but now I'm a teaching artist with Working Assumptions, which is a nonprofit out of Berkeley. And I'm also doing instructional design for an airline company, and current president of ATPI, just doing all the things still.
We definitely have our share of ATPI officers, right?
Yes.
All right, Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy Blaisdell. I am in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. I teach 4 levels of yearbook, and I am about 95% of the way approved for an intro to journalism course starting next year. I also run the theater program at school, and I teach 10th grade English.
And just finished a play, right?
Just finished the play, had 2 days off, and then went right into the musical.
Yay. All right, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I'm dealing with the cat. Yeah, upset. My name is Elizabeth Strail, and I work in Las Vegas, Nevada, and there goes the cat. It is my 2nd year advising, and it is my 24th year teaching, and I have 2 sections or 2 classes of yearbook. They're blended into 2 levels, multimedia and journalism, and then also English 9 honors. And I'm really interested in the commercial photography that you mentioned. I'd like to know about that. So hopefully we get to talk about that tonight.
All right, Beth.
Can you hear me? I have been in Wi-Fi hell. I'm so sorry.
And there she went.
He still is.
He's in purgatory.
I am. I'm Beth Koreski. Are we just supposed to tell a little bit about ourselves? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Beth Koreski. I am a journalism advisor at Parkersburg High School in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I teach 2 sections of Journalism 1, yearbook, newspaper, and mass communications, which is our broadcast class. I have a journalism degree, but this is my 2nd year teaching journalism. And I have many deficiencies, but the one big deficiency that I had coming in is and was and continues to be photography. So I'm trying to soak up all this information. I'm still struggling with settings on the computer or on the camera, but I'm working on it. So.
One day at a time. How about John?
Hey guys, my name is John. I'm coming to you from Youngstown, Ohio. I have a degree in journalism, but no teaching experience yet. I kind of balance my time between trying to do some freelancing and I work in a local history and genealogy center in Warren. So I have a lot of, I feel like broad things because I'm so new to it, but hopefully I can pick your guys' brain.
Awesome. Leslie?
Hi there. This is my 9th year of teaching, but only my 2nd year advising the newspaper. This class has been great because we have been relying solely on yearbook and the yearbook staff, which I do not supervise, for our photos. And we're looking to transition into our own photojournalism project or program, I guess I would say. So this has been a good transition for us.
Awesome. Michelle?
Riley, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay.
See?
Just checking. Hi, my name is Michelle Balmeo. I am in my 18th year advising, and I live in Albany, Oregon, teach at West Albany High School, did newspaper web for a really long time in California and here, and then just last year also took on yearbook.
Awesome. Renee?
All right, I'm Renee Duncan. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. I advise at Burke High School. This is my 13th year teaching, but my 11th year advising. However, this is the first out of those 11 years that I haven't had yearbook. I'm hoping to kind of pick that up in the near future with different opportunities that are hopefully coming my way.
Awesome. And Cary Conover, I see you snuck your way in.
Yes, tech difficulties. My apologies.
No
I'm
worries.
in Wichita. I am a weird hire because I came midway through a school year, the 2010-11 school year. Anyway, I'm finishing up my 11th year. I teach a lot of photojournalism classes, kind of beginner and advanced. I also have a broadcast program, and I'm in charge of the yearbook. I had a career in New York City for 10 years, dozen or so years ago, and have loved teaching. And I'm actually kind of in this slightly different direction of having received an MFA and did that a couple years ago. And so still really interested in photography and maybe just kind of broadening my scopes a little bit.
Did I miss anybody? Nope. Yay. All right. Well, why don't we just start with a little bit about that commercial photography whole thing. The people that we've got here tonight really actually represent a pretty broad range of photography, from really hardcore photojournalism to a variety of skills. In Texas, photography can be taught in 4 different curriculum areas. So talk about that, you guys. Cary, you can start, or Shannon, you can start, and just talk a little bit about how you teach the different kinds of photography to your classes, or do you?
My class is photojournalism, but I'm just going to jump out there and say that it's really kind of creative photography. You know, I kind of want all the kids to end up shooting for publications, and we definitely talk about the ethics and all that. We don't want to be altering, you know, polls out of people's heads, but I definitely treat it kind of first and foremost as just learn photography through the lens of photojournalism, I guess.
When I was teaching commercial photography, I had the potential of having students for 4 years. The first year would be kind of a principles class where they would taste different things, like in digital media. They would do commercial photography, they would do animation and graphic design. But then we would have commercial photo 1, commercial photo 2, and then practicum. And if you follow the Texas TEKS for commercial photography, if you can believe it, the Texas TEKS don't even cover how to use a camera, like learning the exposure triangle. So a great deal of time is spent on that. Commercial photography technically is anything advertising used for print, publication, But it was important for me, for my students, to graduate with a varied portfolio of photojournalism, fine art, still life, all different genres of photography, and experimenting in different skill levels and different areas and different techniques was really important to me. I mean, you know, taking pictures of toothpaste and tennis shoes gets old after a while. You've got to, you know, really force them to use their minds and be creative, and not just go to Instagram or Pinterest to see what's trending, but to really come up with original concepts and ideas. And I would achieve that sometimes with larger projects that they would have checkpoints, but they would have to bring thumbnails and sketches to me and meet with me personally to kind of pitch the idea. So, I mean, it gave me a chance to really develop relationships with these kids. I was fortunate to build successful programs at both of the schools that I was with in Texas. You know, you're always going to have those kids that are like full gung ho, and then you're going to have kids that you're really going to struggle to motivate. So you have to differentiate your instruction to all different skill levels, and you've just really got to have a boatload of patience and, you know, motivation. Was that too much information? Okay.
And I'm never, Deanne, or you guys can jump in, or you guys can just start asking questions. I know Michelle's got questions. I know Leslie's got questions. Everybody's got questions.
I was just going to say, I actually taught commercial photo and photojournalism at my same school, or at my last school. And it was really easy to differentiate those two, because commercial photo was a full year course, both commercial photo 1 and commercial photo 2, versus photojournalism was 18 weeks. And, you know, after in half a year, it was basically like, okay, here's how to work the camera. Here's composition. Bye, maybe come back, you know, versus our commercial photo was able to do more like what Shannon said, which was taking a look at different genres of photography. And so, yes, we did do some documentary like you would in a photojournalism class, but then also the still life and advertising and the various other things, because I wanted everybody, at least in commercial photo 1, to get a taste of different areas. And for me, commercial photo 2 was more about focusing on a couple of different areas that they were really interested in and kind of just punching up their work even more.
I was going to say, I think that is kind of my struggle with photojournalism, is that I have run a semester long class and it's supposed to introduce them to all the basics of journalism and photography in one. So I think any thoughts that you have on just kind of, you know, if I can only provide a little sprinkling of information to them, what do you think is enough to kind of wet their whistle, but also maybe, you know, make them want to come back for more?
Deanne, you want to jump in?
Oh, go ahead, Deanne.
Okay, I'll be quick. I had photojournalism A every fall and photojournalism B every spring. And so sometimes I got the kids in B and sometimes they were done in December after having just had A. So you're right. You're trying to give them a little bit of everything and hopefully entice them to continue. In A, other than, of course, we spend a lot of time at the beginning with camera usage. You know, you have to, obviously. And, but I tried to make the assignments very diverse in that I assigned them, you know, a sports and action assignment, but I also assigned them a portrait, and I assigned them, you know, different things to give them a chance to have different experiences. So it wasn't, even though it was photojournalism A, I took them outside of that realm a little bit, just to let them explore. So, and there's nothing in the rules that say you can't do that.
For me, it was about getting the cameras in their hands as quickly as possible, because that's what A, they wanted to do, and B, you know, when you only have 18 weeks, and really let's go ahead and call it 16 with like testing and other stuff, just trying to get them as much time as possible, getting the basics under their belt so you could maybe get them to some more than just like the exposure triangle by December was always kind of a big thing for me.
And yeah, I mean, I did something similar to Deanne, which was, I mean, we didn't necessarily strictly do photojournalism. We did some still lifes to help, you know, understand what aperture does, you know, and how changing that changes your settings. And same thing with shutter speed. And, you know, I think you kind of have to go outside of that unless you just constantly have something, you know, a place where you can take 30 kids in your school at all times to get them to understand those concepts.
Yeah, I might go rogue a little bit and take the unconventional route, but for an 18-week program, I would go over DSLRs, but I would have them use their phones. I would want them to fall in love with the art of telling stories more than using a camera, and use the camera as a carrot to come back. Like if you come back for photo 1, you're going to have a camera. It's going to be one-on-one. You're going to be able to use it, blah, blah, blah. But to actually get them telling stories faster so that they can reap some of those rewards and fine tune their skill a little bit in that 18 weeks. It's, you know, like Andrea said, it's super difficult some of those kids still will not get the exposure triangle after 18 weeks. You know, they'll leave your classroom with like deer in the headlights look. And then you don't have that much time to really do any fun or quantitative assignments. So I would start out with a cell phone for an 18-week course. I mean, there's a lot of great photos that kids can take with cell phones, and at least they learn compositional techniques. And then they will also learn about the genres and, you know, different ways of telling stories.
I think that's a great idea. If you have school support for that. I didn't,
Yeah.
so.
No, that's
So-
very helpful. Thank you.
Would you recommend starting off with compositional elements, then going into like, okay, here's how to use a DSLR camera, just the basics, even on auto, just to get the start, and then go more into the exposure triangle and stuff like that? Is that the progression of how you would take that, or what progression would you recommend?
With a camera, you mean? Having the camera and having the time?
Just in general, like having like that 18-week course, because I also have photojournalism in one semester where it's super quick.
If I'm doing an 18-week course and I'm using the phones, I'm going to explain in the beginning how the different careers work within photojournalism and photography, what opportunities are available, go over the different career paths, go over the DSLR, what it does for us. But then we have to focus on, hey, this is the tool that you're going to be using. This is how you can refine your skills using this tool. And this is how we're going to use your tool effectively to communicate visually and tell stories. That's what I would do. I mean, the exposure triangle with the lessons that I have, the curriculum that I have, that exposure triangle takes a month.
Cary,
And that's formative assessments, that's labs. I mean, that's real. You try to run that through in a week or 10 days, and it just, in my experience, it's not long enough.
Cary, thought?
I have a question. I keep hearing this word commercial photography, and maybe I missed something early in the Zoom, but it seems like that is a direction. I guess I thought this, you know, I thought we were all going to be talking about teaching photojournalism, which is a different, I know that commercial photography being a professional is really important, but maybe you could shed some light on the whole commercial photography education part.
It was simply that in Texas, at least, photography can be taught in 4 different curriculum areas, photojournalism being one of them. And then there's other ones, including commercial. And so the train of thought was we can include those other areas a little bit while we're teaching photojournalism, even if we don't have the year-long CTE courses and the money that comes with CTE, et cetera. So that's how we got.
Yeah, the money that comes with CTE. Unfortunately, that they are fixated on certification and numbers and money per certification. So in Texas, it is commercial photography or photojournalism, and money is tied to commercial photography. So unfortunately, certification really drives that.
Or yearbook, if you've got that kind of funding with yearbook.
We actually still have a pretty robust art photo program at our school. So my school building is brand new. And they actually did put a dark room in the art photo classroom. So there's still some places where it's holding on, but it's not getting the funding like CTE does.
And that's kind of unique to the Houston area, actually. See a lot more
Yeah.
art programs down there. Deanne, you were going to say
Bradley,
something?
yeah, I want to kind of circle back to the question about how much time do we spend at the beginning talking about camera usage and you know, all of the different dials and so forth. I think that I did a lot of focus on that at the very beginning, but I also tried then to have the cameras in the hands of the kids during the class period, and then set up some different scenarios within the class period or within the classroom for the assignment, so that the kids are working under my supervision. We're problem solving together, trying to figure out why this isn't working, why this is blurry, why this is dark. And they're helping to answer each other's questions and work through each other's problems as they're taking the photo and going, why, you know, what's wrong with this? Yeah. And so rather than say, here's a camera, go have fun, and expecting them to figure out how to shoot a football game, we do a lot of stuff right around campus and in class at first to try. And some kids aren't ever going to get past using AV and TV because manual is just too overwhelming in those first few months. And that's okay. That's totally okay. You know, if they're picking up all the other stuff.
Yeah, guided practice is huge. That's guided practice.
Let's take that piece of it and kind of go around and talk about equipment, because if you're in a school that doesn't have a lot of money and a lot of equipment, that kind of ties your hands on what you can do, as opposed to a school that's got a lot of money and 6 or 7 300 2.8s and whatever. Thoughts? Oh, dead silence.
I mean, so my first school where I was at, the one where I got told the week before I started teaching, that I was teaching photo. I mean, I started off with 2 working cameras and 30 kids per period in photojournalism. And it was a lot of, this is also when we had to teach darkroom. So I was able to kind of rotate out the digital photography with the film photography and kind of make, you know, little stations and rotations and that sort of thing. And Grant wrote and begged and borrowed and built up the stable of cameras, but that's how we functioned. Is, you know, some kids were working with the cameras. Some kids were working on maybe uploading their pictures. Some kids were doing this, and we just kind of rotated through to work with not having much equipment. It sucked, but it was possible, and it took a lot of planning, and it also took a lot of, well, I'm sorry you weren't ready for your turn, but you know, this is the schedule we have to keep to because I have 30 of y'all, you know.
We have a lot of cameras in my program. We charge a $25 lab fee per student per semester, and that really, you know, keeps us pretty well able to, you know, get 5 new Rebel T7Is or whatever. I start really heavy on aperture, and I kind of tie that into kind of the history of photography, the camera obscura. Composition comes next for me in my program. We get a little bit more in depth into exposure, shutter speed. We really not dial down on depth of field at that point. And by then they're, you know, pretty comfortable with the DSLRs. But I have a lot of respect for, you know, people who don't have 30 DSLRs just sitting in a closet.
Hey, it's y'all's night. Start asking some questions.
So I was just going to ask, so we are a CTE program and we've gotten some funding through CTE, but I don't have a specific photography course. I have a yearbook course, even though I just changed the name of it to photojournalism yearbook production, so that I could fold it into the CTE pathway. But a lot of the kids who take that course are not kids coming from our photography class. I don't teach the photography class. There's a teacher who does that. It's kids who are motivated to make a great yearbook. And so oftentimes they're juniors or seniors and they are yearbook kids. I mean, I'm sure if you've ever advised a yearbook, you know what a yearbook kid's like. So I have a hard time because they will go out at the very beginning and go shoot something and they'll be really excited. They have like, you know, hundreds of photos and they come back and they're just all trash. Like there's just nothing usable. And it can be really devastating. So I like the idea of the kind of guided, sheltered practice in the classroom. I'm wondering if you have like, you know, ideas off the top of your head, like this is my go-to every time. You know, when it's the beginning of the semester and I real quick just need to get them up to speed because, you know, the first football games before school even starts out here.
Band practice.
So they don't like have the opportunity to mess it up too many times or else, you know, right now I have a couple kids who are in a pickle because they said, we have photos from girls volleyball, but they're not very good until this game. But at this game, they were all wearing pink because it was like breast cancer awareness night. So we have all these great photos because we were kind of trash photographers until this game. But now we have a whole spread of volleyball players wearing pink. Like literally it looks like our school colors are pink and black because all their best photos are wearing pink. So I don't know if did I ask a question in that? If I asked a question in that, I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are.
I heard the question and it was like, how do you get them up to speed quickly? And I don't know if it's possible at your school, but at mine, end of July, early August, we've got at least volleyball practice, we have football practice, we have band practice. Now we have water polo, and my photo editors will just make all of the new staff photographers come up and basically spend a day going from place to place, taking pictures, giving them feedback on the spot, helping them with settings and that sort of thing. You know, if just depending on how my schedule works, they'll even come back to the room and project them up on the screen and that sort of thing to let everybody see. But they basically get some, you know, real experience, but not necessarily in a game time situation, but they also get advice on like, here's where to stand and, you know, so on and so forth. Here's the settings I like to use. Here's the lens I like to use, you know, oh, this is something I learned, you know, directly from kids who have been shooting for a year or two at that point.
Yeah, and Deanne was right. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my classes were 3 hours. They were 3-hour blocks. So you've got to keep kids engaged for 3 hours. And it's in our first class started at
Beth,
7 a.m.
Don't pass out, Beth. It's okay.
7 a.m., you know, so these kids are dragging in their pajamas and they're just really tired. But I got the best results when we were always running stations and labs in the classroom, and they were getting that guided practice and they were getting that feedback. And we would do for like aperture, for shallow depth of field, board games, setting up Monopoly pieces and Scrabble pieces and getting those pieces in the foreground and focus and everything else to fall off. For broad depth of field, we would use action figures and they would set up 3 of them and have to demonstrate that they could isolate one and then include the one in the middle and then have all 3 of them in the line and focus. Shutter speed, we would do ghosting and we would do light painting. We would do fast, you know, water balloons, all of those things in class time so that they didn't have an excuse, you know, because if you send them away with homework and just homework, they're not going to bring it back. But filling up 3 hours of class time shooting and critiquing work, you know, they'll get there.
One suggestion I have, if, for example, and I'm sorry, I can't remember your name and the names aren't up there, but if you have yearbook kids and they're coming in as juniors and seniors and they don't have someone to go out and shadow from your staff, if you've got like a bunch of new kids, we've on occasion accessed the professionals, for example, at the Austin American Statesman, who are coming to shoot the football game anyway on a Friday night because they're covering it for the, you know, for the local paper. Contacting them and seeing if a kid can shadow them, go where they go, ask them what settings they're using, lenses, pointers, and so forth. So you might think about calling on a professional if that's not something you feel comfortable doing. I mean, I know advisors who go down on the sidelines with kids while they're learning how to do that. I mean, there's no crime in that either, for sure. Andrea, I can tell you have something to say about this.
No, sorry, my rabbit just jumped over my sister's dog and I was relaying that to my sister. But also I was agreeing with you because like those people who are sent to shoot these high school games are actually super nice. I have seen that like they will just give their card out to my students. If my students just like, introduce themselves, they'll let them try taking pictures with their ginormous lenses and that sort of thing. So the professionals are definitely a great resource.
So I have a professional who is contracted through our district to go and take photos at all of the sporting events. And the students have gotten so reliant on knowing that that is there as a backup that they are lowering their standards for going and taking photos and for the quality of the photos that they take. How would you motivate them?
Have him not show up. Tell them that something happened and they've got to step up and see what happens.
I've been offered to have our photography service provide dance photos, and I'm like, nope, I need my kids to shoot that. They have a better rapport with their peers than your photographer will.
So another angle would be, for example, it's a student publication, whether it's newspaper, news magazine, yearbook, online, whatever, it's a student publication. And when you start diluting that with photos from pros, then when the kids want to enter into contests, that's a big kind of for, it to have a lot of pro stuff represented, plus just the fact that it is a student publication and it should be student work featured, whether it's the writing, the photography, the art, the design. I mean, we're not hiring photographers to write the stories, and we're not taking, you know what I mean? They should buy into the fact that they're doing this for their peers as student journalists or students on their staff. So that's my take on that one.
Are they competitive at all? Because I could see this turning into like a weekly photo type thing where you could be cheesy. Like I've gotten those little trophies at Target before and given them out, and they're collecting them now and that sort of thing. Best $5 I ever spent. But anyway, if they've got maybe a little bit of that, even if it's just against each other at first, that could perhaps be a way of getting them to not slack off. And you could even turn it into something like a bingo board where they have to get different activities or something like that. I'm just trying to think of various things out, so they're not going for the easy assignments every single time. That could be something that could also potentially be a motivating factor. I know people who have graded off a bingo board basically every grading cycle. It's like, here are your options, and you've got to like go for, the 5 in a row or something for this grading cycle, and you can choose which direction you go, but that's what you've got to do to get your grades. So that way you don't have the kids going, well, I'm just going to go to this club meeting because I'm already going to be there every week, for the entire cycle.
I have a question about workflow. We spent a lot of time talking about what process, the kids will follow when they go out to shoot an assignment, and then what happens after. I'm just curious about all of your different systems and how you've kind of streamlined that to be efficient, from the point of, okay, this assignment is created to now these photos are being used.
Cary?
We have a local server. We don't rely on Google or anything, but we just dump our pictures. I make them be really organized with their folders, but yeah, it's always something I could be a lot better at with them. I would love for them the next day after their shoot, all right, focus on getting like the 30 best toned, captioned in a new folder, ready for the editors to put on pages. But it just rarely, if anything, they'll like label a green dot next to all their files in their football folder. If I have any problem, it's just that there's just too many pictures. And then them doing that little color coding helps a little bit because you can, list them just by the colored. So still learning quite a bit on that one.
I tried to have my kids label it something that would really help us feel like we could find it easily. So like volleyball, November 12th, or varsity volleyball, November 12th, instead of fun times at volleyball or something like that, which doesn't indicate what game it was or anything, anything at all. And then once my kids dumped there, we also had a school server as opposed to putting it at someplace else. But they would upload their photos into their personal photo folders. They each had personal photo folders. And then within that volleyball game, I had them pick their best ofs. So they drug into a separate folder within that, their best of volleyball. And so they'd already culled through and they already had sorted some of the best ofs. I know Bradley does a lot of starring and different things like that, but we just had a best of folder. And then the editors could go, or the page designers could go into the kids' personal photo folders, click on their best ofs and see what they needed to pull out for the page.
So we are on Google because the amount of server space that our school gives us is really, really sad. We basically have them organized by event. So there's a sports folder. Within all the sports folder, there's all the different sports. Then they're labeling by when the game was, an opponent, and then the photographers have their own little folders in there. And we started this year pulling out favorites as well. So in a perfect world, the students who are laying out the spreads are going just into the favorites folder. That doesn't always happen because they're trying to get they're trying to avoid repeating somebody. If it's football, it can be really hard sometimes to not get the quarterback and the running back on there about 50,000 times, so maybe they've already got somebody on there and they're trying to find somebody else, or the shape's not right or something like that. But ideally they are going to that best folder, that favorites folder, to grab stuff. And then from there, the photographer for the spread will actually go back and do all of the color correcting and that sort of stuff that's needed. So that way they're not necessarily editing stuff that's never used.
Yeah.
See, none of them took my workshop, did they? That's not true. We all do. I think the conclusion that we all came to was we do what works, right? When it comes right down to it, we find a system that works for us, and that's what we do. I had the luxury, the system that I taught this pre-year class in both situations. We were shooting 300,000 photos a year, but I paid my photographers. So if they wanted to get paid, they put the photos where they were supposed to be. So we can work more on that too, but I do really feel it's got to be.
Well, hey, in my system, if they want to get their grade, they put their photos where they said they were supposed to be. So,
right. And I told you, I told the class that we solved our caption problem because we paid our photographers $9 for the caption and $1 for the picture. And so if they wanted their $10 for published picture, they had to have the caption in the metadata or they didn't get their money. We all solve our problem.
Sorry. Saving it with the correct file name is so important.
Oh yeah.
So important.
In the right place with a name that means something to somebody. That is a victory right there. It's got to be in the right place so that people can find it with something. All right, who's next? Elizabeth, have you asked anything?
I asked about the commercial photography, but I know that one of you said that you teach multimedia. How do you address the photography and multimedia differently than you do with a standard photojournalism or yearbook?
I had a really good time my last semester teaching digital media. And the way we went about it is we kind of collaborated with Walter Wick, who does the I Spy books. And I divided the classroom into rows. They were color coded and they worked in a team for the entire 18 weeks. And I gave them a list of the shots that they were going to have to do. And they were like flat lay, vintage, backlit, all these different, styled shoots. And they had to come up with their concepts within the team. And we would also do videos. So one of the person on the team was usually using a video camera. One or two or three were using the camera. We had like 3 class D810s and we had strobes. So they would have to set up and style and shoot and then edit and then write a poem. And then we did stop motion animation for one of those. I mean, we were hitting every single teak, but I just did it differently. So they felt like they were working on an industry level project and producing one larger piece at the end. And they were amazing. I was so excited with the outcome. I mean, they did a really good job for kids that just walked in the door with zero experience, zero. And if I were teaching again, I would do it just like that.
Well,
My
go
much
ahead.
less cool.
No,
I
go
said my
ahead.
class is much less cool than Shannon's. This is my first year teaching digital media. And we've started with photo one because I'm speaking of CTE funding, I'm waiting for my federal funds to come through and buy some of the video equipment that I wanted to really get things up and running. But also just because, a lot of the foundations in photography, it really does apply to a video. You're going to use a lot of those compositional techniques. You're going to use different focal lengths and that sort of thing. And so what we're doing is we're actually finishing up photo right now, and we're going to use stop motion animation as our bridge into video. It's like, okay, let's kind of connect our thing here. Yeah.
That's
But her way
definitely-
sounds cooler.
I like it.
Oh, go ahead.
Nope. You get
I
the
was
last
just gonna say,
question.
I have another question if nobody else wants to.
Jump in.
I was just gonna ask, so when I was at the JEA conference, one of the sessions I attended really stressed the importance of representation in your student publication in the photos and just making sure that you didn't have the same students every single time. And I just wondered kind of how you promoted that concept with your, if you do, with your students, because that's a problem for us.
And it's not really me, it's the editors who are enforcing it, but they are very strict about, making sure that everybody on a spread is tagged there, even if, and then we have just this Excel spreadsheet of everybody's name, and this is how we monitor too, any name changes, so on and so forth. But they are responsible for logging when somebody is used and how. And so this is, one, so we can kind of track and make judgment calls about whether somebody should be used, a third time or something like that. It's like, well, they were really only just pictured in a caption and they weren't interviewed, they were just there, versus, oh no, they were the focus of a story here and then, interviewed on this other spread there. They're really done. You need to go find somebody else. So, and one of as part of our editing process for each spread, the section editors have to check and make sure every single kid who is tagged on that spread, they have been marked on what they call the highlighted roster and how, so we can just kind of monitor that. And the editors in chief are pretty merciless about, no, you need to go find somebody else if they get past a certain point. But when I was talking about our workflow, when I said in a perfect world, we would just use those favorites folders. When we get outside of that, it's often because they're trying not to use the same person, like the same theater kid is the lead in every single show. It's like, well, we don't need to put them every single time. Maybe we should find somebody else, for this other photo for this show and that sort of thing.
little bit of a tangent thought is the social media that all these kids have just been fed the last several years. It's so hard kind of keeping that mentality at bay and sort of having to say, listen, this yearbook is not about your friends. And I have one of the worst, most challenging situations this year as I've ever had with a editor-in-chief who just wants to put in her sister and pictures of her friends. And it's just, I kind of look around the room and I'm thinking, am I the only one that's seeing this? It looks like, I don't want to say it, a sorority newsletter. It's just like, you've got to find ways to just challenge people to look beyond just their immediate circle. And I'm really struggling with that this year in particular.
So all four of you have talked about the variety of teaching situations that you've had. And I think we've all been in situations where we're teaching 3 or 4 classes in one class period or something to that effect. So just kind of reflect on, and then I've got one more follow-up question at the end. That is this, I always viewed my program as a success when I was the facilitator and students were really teaching each other. Or my role was just to facilitate the process and give them the resources that they need. What do y'all think about that as a concept?
That's how I like to my program to run. I joke that I'm there to like unjam the printer and deposit the money at the end of the day. But really, ideally, yeah, it really is the kids who are there facilitating everything. And then, if I notice something like, the situation you mentioned with the sister and the friends being in the book, that's when I try and pull them aside and go, hey, I'm noticing this, is it just me? Is there a solution we can come up to that? And that's when I kind of, intervene, I guess I would say. But it's really just more of a conversation, even at that point. It's not me saying, oh, you must change this. And usually they take it to heart at that point. But yeah, I really have said multiple times that they don't really need me there. I'm just there to be the adult in the room. And at the end of the day, they've got it. So
I used to think that it was, a gift that I was giving my students to let them have carte blanche. And I don't think that anymore. I feel like they need direction. And I've grown a lot better at sort of getting in there and really, just being a little more firm. I'm thinking specifically about my video kids in particular. Yearbook tends to kind of fall in this sort of formulaic, the seasons come, the football games happen, it kind of takes care of itself. But with my broadcast, I can really push them in a lot of different directions that we don't go in yearbook.
All right, well, let me just wind down then and say, where is photography, photojournalism going as a class, as a profession? What do y'all think?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, every single industry relies on photographs, images to drive sales. I mean, everywhere you look, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, images. Sadly, I don't think that it's valued. People still think that it's just an art class, but look where it's going and look at how big of a slice that is in the economy when you're talking about e-commerce. So I think we're going to see more social media based marketing classes. We're going to see more emphasis put on that. There's always going to be stories to be told in different ways. I can't speak for yearbook. I'm not a yearbook advisor. But even when I was teaching, it was so important for my kids to not only learn, but to practice very good, if not industry skills of commercial and fine art and photojournalism and all different aspects, all different genres, because you're more marketable when you can do more. And this is such a competitive market now. You really have to be able to market yourself. So
Piggybacking off what Shannon said, it wouldn't surprise me to see classes, at least in Texas, like photojournalism, that are specifically just focused on that still medium, kind of moving towards a more convergent setting, because I really do think you need to be able to do different forms now. I don't think it's enough to just be a photographer. You need to be able to at least, throw together a basic video and that sort of thing. And that's just not necessarily represented in our standards just yet, but I think we'll eventually catch up. It might be about 10 years or so before that happens, but well, I mean, come on now. I was having to teach darkroom until 2016. I mean, it takes a while down here, but
That's about 20 years because we gave it up in 99. So
yeah, exactly. So I think down the road you're going to see that, just because of exactly what Shannon said about social media and these different companies needing people who can just as easily snap a picture, but then go make a little quick video,
yeah, one of my former students is the social media manager for Dickies, and she photographs, she makes videos. She's always flying somewhere to New York or Chicago, and she posts like the backstories of what they're doing, and it's amazing. And she likes to do that.
I actually came across today the TikTok of somebody who does social media for Texas A&M. And yeah, he's doing the different platforms for not just the university, but also their local NPR station. And he's having to do everything. And it's just like that's where we're going,
Deanne?
I agree. I think you can't just be a great still photojournalist and get a job at a daily paper or at a magazine anymore. That used to be the case. But as I've seen at the Austin paper, each in turn, great photographers losing their job and freelancers getting hired in their place. I think the more skills you have, the more chance you have of getting a job. If you want to be a photographer, I don't think you can just be a still photojournalist probably anymore.
Cary?
I would just be embarrassed to show you all the Instagram account for my yearbook staff because it has one photo of a picture of the staff. And we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. We got to revive that thing. And what a awesome opportunity to teach the public, their peers about photojournalism. I kind of feel like Instagram maybe is not as much a priority. I think it's a lot more about video, Snapchat, TikTok, whatnot. But I think, becoming a great photographer is easy, but let's tie it into a way that you can market the yearbook and get kids excited. And it's all this kind of big melting pot of skills,
Cary, show your students the Talon at Argyle High School's Instagram account.
Argyle. I'm going to write it
Argyle High
down.
School, the Talon. They're doing it all right. Everything. That's the school, by the way, that I was telling you about. That's making $10,000 to $15,000 a year on selling photos through SmugMug, and they've just got it down. She just 8 or 9 years ago, she just made a commitment to that, and they do a hell of a job marketing the yearbook and sharing. I mean, they're always posting something on Instagram, and their photography is incredible still. And Stacy's not even teaching it anymore. So that's just a good one to follow.
Where is
What's that, Bradley?
It's the Talon at Argyle High School in Argyle, Texas.
ARGYLE, I think, isn't it?
Correct. I think the account is the Talon, though.
Okay.
I think it's the Talon. It might be the Talon News.
Yeah, it might be the Talon News. All right. Well, let's see. You guys want to run around the horn, and did somebody find it? The Talon News.
Yes, it's the Talon News. Just following.
Any last thoughts from the students? Michelle wanted to ask a little bit more about social media. I don't think Shannon used social media a lot.
We did. We have an Instagram. I mean, our Instagram was pretty strong, but I'd never embraced Twitter, and I don't TikTok. So
We're
I
having a
think more
debate.
than anything, it's just like, the kids, they take all these photos and then maybe 9 will end up on a spread. And it's
Well,
like you took
not only
hundreds
is it
of
they'll end up on a
photos.
spread, they'll end up on a spread next fall, right?
Well, we have
Right. So
we do a web supplement now. I have like a kid on staff, and we're gonna now this year it's just a kid, but it's going to be multiple kids in the future. And her job is just to produce supplemental content. And so she did, her first deadline was a whole bunch of photos that from like the first actual print deadline that we just didn't use, and captioning those and putting that in a gallery. And she's done some videos and that sort of stuff. And then when the book comes out, it's like, hey, there's more. And so I wouldn't discount that as another resource out there.
well, and I think there's a sense that like the book is going to arrive and nothing in the book can be seen before, and it just has to be this huge unveiling surprise. And it's like, well, in this, I just feel like, they're so saturated with visual stimulation that there is sort of a needs to be a balance of the kind of instant gratification. Your photographer was out there and taking photos and took 300 photos. We can share 10 on Instagram and still have a great book that's a beautiful surprise. And I think they're just really struggling with that because they see like it has to be this like mystery.
And how many times do they buy something sight unseen though? They
I know.
don't. That's my argument with them. It's like, when do you ever buy stuff that you've never
Buy
seen
a
before?
pair of shoes without trying it on, right?
Yeah.
It's also a terrible recruiting tool to come out at the end of the year and then we all leave for the summer, so like all these kids who are excited to see it that could potentially join.
So push it. So publish your 8 other photos with a tagline, and you want more, buy a yearbook. I mean, that's what the Talon does, right?
Great
They'll
strategy.
publish live tweet or live Instagram from pretty much every major sporting event on their campus. Everything from golf to football. I mean, literally everything. And that's what they've made their commitment doing. It's not just the big homecoming football game. It's also the little golf tournament that was 2 hours away and they had to get up at 5 o'clock and ride the bus with the golf people. So they've made that commitment to follow through with all of that. And then they promote the hell out of the yearbook, and then they sell the photos because who else is shooting the golf or the cross country stuff, right? So they make a lot of money doing that.
So are they connecting the camera to their phones to be able to post that quickly, or how are they getting? That's my question of like that live Instagram or something if they're
Well,
using
They
DSLR.
can. That's not what they're doing. They're downloading to a computer and then posting on Instagram. But typically, like what we used to do is we have another staff member there, and we would just hand off cards. So we would just, after a while of shooting, we would just hand off the card, and then that person would download. Partly because it was a security thing for me. If it was that big of an event, now we would do it for small events. But I didn't want the card coming back and then going bad. So we would download a card several times during an event, and then they would just pick a picture and tweet it. What Argyle does is they just take a break and they just find a picture and tweet it or Instagram it. We're having a big debate about how we're going to use Twitter now, or are we going to use Twitter? But that's probably.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
I'm curious about the web supplement, Andrea. Where do you house? That's what my kids want to do this year, and I can't figure out the logistics of it. Where do you is that a Google Gallery? Like, where do you house those? Where do you direct them to?
Videos on YouTube, and it's just embedded because they've got a YouTube channel. Photos they're running through Flickr. So yeah, just various options. Things that have been along and have been stable were kind of important to me, and so that's why we settled with those two. Google just makes me nervous because I know they're cracking down on storage sizes for these big campus things. And so and also like when I go, or, when the student graduates, then bam, that account's deactivated. So I didn't want to go that route for photo storage or videos.
And you can import your entire Flickr gallery into SmugMug. That is a
Mhm.
possibility.
Yeah.
SmugMug just has prettier galleries than Flickr. All All right, well, it's 9 o'clock. I promised the gang 9 o'clock. I put all of their email addresses in the Canvas page. So if you want to reach out to somebody to get more details on Andrea's website or whatever, I'm sure they would all respond to an email. And if you want good peaches in the springtime, go visit Deanne and yeah. And we need to talk about the whiskey down the road though. So let's give our speakers a round of applause. Yay. And the four of you, thank you so much for spending part of your night with us. We really appreciate it. Next week, we've got some more other professionals. I'm not even going to say, I was going to say professional photographers, but I think as I look around the four of you, I think you're all professional photographers. So next week is just different professionals. So in the meantime, you guys, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll hang around if anybody has any issues that we need to talk about. But right now I'm going to click